Okay, next chapter up is types of conformity. But now you might ask yourself, why is it that we conform to these things, to the majority or to the people that surround us? Why do norms and others have such a powerful influence of that? It's kind of uncool, isn't it? I want to be an individual. I want to be me. I don't want to just kind of stupidly following along the crowd. And the other question you might have, like, well, if you conform, what does it actually mean? Is it just that I display conformity, that I just pretend that I believe what everyone else believes, or do I really believe what everyone else is believing? And you're in luck, because both of these questions will be answered in this chapter. So the first one, right? Why do we conform? I think conformity has a touch of uncool, and there's something where you just simply sheep-like go along with the majority or the people that you are surrounded with. But there are two really important factors. The first one that I wanted to remind you of is on our very first session on why are human beings, why are you and I as a species so successful? Why did we survive and not the Neanderthals? And it's because we have this ability to live in large groups, to cooperate. And in order to cooperate with larger groups, I think we really have to make sure that we know how to behave, to transmit information, and we have to know who is on our side and who is not, who can we trust in our team and who is not. And all of these problems are basically trying to regulate it, or at least mitigate it by our norms that we adhere to. Okay, so there's a really important role in our daily lives that norms play, and they're often, as I said in the beginning, we often can't really perceive the kind of tiny influence they have, but they have a very powerful influence once you kind of make them apparent. So for our cooperation. The other point is obviously that sometimes, as I mentioned, I think in a previous lectures often, is that we need to figure out how to kind of reduce the information overload and uncertainty that is around us, right? We have to kind of say, like, okay, what is the best product to buy? How should I behave in this situation, and so forth. And there's always uncertainty. There's always too much information out there. Hence, to kind of reduce that, we can use norms too. Let me explain that a little bit more in detail. So here's kind of like the negative side of conformity, right? Here's Martin Luther King Jr. talking about the conformity we don't like. Many people fear nothing more terribly than to take a position which stands out sharply and clearly from the prevailing opinion. Not a few men who cherish lofty and noble ideas hide them under a bushel for fear of being called different. I don't want to mix Martin Luther King's really powerful message with Ash's kind of calling out the length of certain lines, but this is basically a very eloquent description of the Ash, or not eloquent, maybe more like lofty, a noble description of what happens in the Ash paradigm, right? There are these people who have, there's like here in the middle, let's assume that this is the person who's being manipulated. He knows that it's B, right? He has the clear understanding, he can see and he knows it's B, yet all of his people around him say C, and now he goes with C. That is exactly what Martin Luther King is talking about. This is basically, I know I'm right, but still I go with the majority. I hide under a bushel. There's another type that Martin Luther King doesn't mention, but that I mentioned in the beginning. It's like, how do we manage with all the information overload and uncertainty? So here, I think one way we do it every day, I think, or most of us do it on a at least weekly basis, is trying to figure out which product to buy. You need something. You, for instance, go to Amazon, you look for the reviews. You don't even read the reviews. You just see like, oh, this product has a high 5-star rating. That's fine. So for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I needed to buy some seeds for my lawn because it looks like a muddy desert. So there was like hundreds of different seeds. I didn't want to read any of that. I didn't want to handle that information overload. I just checked what is the thing that is highest rated to a decent price. Oh, look at that. 5,000 people rated it. It has a 4.5-star rating. Awesome. Bought it. Okay. So here I look for basically for others in order to get information. And that's a influence others have on us, a very powerful influence, but it's also a very helpful influence. influence. I didn't want to read anything about seed. I couldn't care less. So this resembles more the Sharif one, right? I see something is ambiguous. I don't really know whether it moves this white dot moves 2 or 3 inches, but I know that basically everyone else is seeing the same thing. And if we kind of figure it out together, then maybe if we find a compromise, that's the right thing to do. So we kind of change the way we see the world basing on the informational input we get from others. So just to kind of summarize these two types of influence, right? You have on the one hand in the Sharif ones where the group effect is an informational one. I just say, I don't know how much is, what do you guys think? Okay. And then we kind of agree on a certain type of movement as a group, and we think that this is the right one. Whereas in Ash, it's what's called a normative one. It's like, okay, we're supposed to be in this group to call out the wrong one. Okay, then let me do that. Let me go along with that. This produces different types of conformity. The private conformity is the one in Sharif. That's the one with my grass seeds. Well, I actually changed my opinion. I now think that Speedy Grass 200 or whatever the name was, is an excellent, excellent seeds. I can see in the background when I look out the window some tiny grass seeds or grass coming up, peeking through the muddy desert that is my backyard. So fantastic. I'm on team Speedy Grass seed. So I actually changed the way I think about it. I have now an opinion on grass seeds, and so this is private conformity. Public conformity is something I experienced very often when I was young. I grew up the first 9 years of my life in East Germany, and East Germany was a kind of like a dictatorship, a socialist dictatorship, and there were a lot of things where you had to take part in that were just about propaganda. So for instance, we had every year, we had to celebrate another record harvest. We could go to the shops and there was nothing in the shops, yet then we would say like, another year where our republic is flourishing, how wonderful it is. And everyone in the room know that this is basically BS, yet we would still go along just to kind of publicly conform. But we had a different opinion privately. So this is the important. One thing I just want to say is like private conformity has a much more long-lasting influence than public conformity, right? So the moment the normative influence slips, the moment I'm allowed to say that we did not have a record harvest, when I, for instance, was with my parents alone and we would all laugh out loud how we enacted this theatrical play today at school, then I would not immediately change my opinion on the topic. One last bit I want to talk about just quickly is kind of this thorny question of trying to understand, okay, how much do we actually change? So there's the first study by Burns and colleagues. They kind of looked at Ash-style paradigms in the functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner and fMRI study, and they looked basically at the neurobiological correlates. And what I'm trying to see is the conformity more seen in kind of prefrontal brain areas? Meaning, is it something more displayed? Is it something more deliberative? Or is it more in kind of early visual processing, more subcortical region, which would actually indicate that we somehow change the way we see the world. And what they find is more support for the latter rather than the former. So they find actually kind of influence on, and I'm tapping while saying that at the back of my head, in more kind of early visual processing areas in our occipital lobe, but then also more subcortical influences. So suggesting that at least some part of conformity is a transformation in how we see the world. The other study, which I thought was really interesting, is kind of where Chris Frith and others kind of looked at what happens if the majority agrees with us to our enjoyment of something. So let's say you're listening to a piece of music. This is what they did. And it's like, oh, that's good. Absolutely love that track. That's a banger. And now you listen to it, and I can see basically in your ventrostratum that you really enjoy that piece of music. And now you learn that two experts actually agree. Two music experts think like, yes, you're right on. It's an absolute banger, fantastic track. We agree. will that basically impact the way you perceive that track? And what they find is that this increases your enjoyment. So it's basically, if you know that anyone, like music experts, value your opinion, that others value your opinion, agree with your opinion, not value, agree with your opinion, you enjoy the same piece of music more. So what I want to end here is basically saying that conformity is not just kind of us displaying, but it also impacts how we see to some degree and enjoy the world around us.